The story begins in a fortress where a person sits alone in his room, deeply disappointed by something. He thinks that the people of their territory are going to starve again, but the Duke is not bothering to take any measures to prevent it. Suddenly, he looks out of the window, finding a massive ball of fire approaching the fortress, which leaves him shocked. As he gazes at the widespread destruction in the city, with countless soldiers killing civilians after the attack, he realizes they are under attack by the Imperial army. Remembering that this army is commanded by the Emperor Zerone, the person feels enraged at him. While more and more balls of fire start to fall upon the fortress, he notices a warrior standing above the roof of the castle and recognizes him as their duke. Shocked, he calls out to the duke, urging him to get away from there. A massive ball of fire strikes the roof, causing everything to be destroyed. Moments later, another fireball smashes through the person's window, burning him to death and marking the fall of the worthless territory of the empire. Right after his death, the person wakes up as a young man, finding himself in a room. He looks at his reflection in the mirror, becoming shocked, considering that he was supposed to die. He remembers this face belonging to the Duke when he was young, about 20 years ago. The person becomes surprised, realizing that he has regressed as Duke Aaron as a result of something completely unexpected happening to him. Aaron becomes shocked, locks himself up in a room, and stops eating and drinking while continuously cursing the Emperor for killing him. He keeps thinking about taking his revenge. After spending 3 days in a similar way, venting his frustration at those who led to his death, he finally makes the decision to use the second chance to the fullest. Shutting himself in a room again, he starts to investigate everything about the Duke to live like him and prevent the coming fall. Shortly thereafter, a sudden famine strikes the territory, and Aaron, despite having all the luxuries, refuses to eat. Crushing the bread with his hands, he considers that his people are unable to even have a piece of bread. Aaron becomes frustrated, remembering that the real Aaron never paid attention to his people, who were dying of hunger. Watching him crush the bread like that, Cheryl, his sister, becomes angry and stops him from doing that, remarking that it is very precious, and she got it after a lot of effort. Seeing her, Aaron quickly puts the bread back, stating that he was doing it because he can digest it better in crushed form. Asking if she has time, Aaron suggests going somewhere, making her confused. After some time, both of them go to visit the Knight Captain Rommel, who states that Aaron already ordered him to manage the food supply and asks why he called him with his armor on. In response, Aaron reveals that Emperor Zerone is going to kill them all, making both Rommel and Cheryl shocked and unable to believe it. Cheryl asks why he would do such a thing despite being their uncle and considering the promise he made with their late father. In response, Aaron states that it is not strange for the promise to be broken until they have the right to the throne and reveals that Zerone is taking part in underground work to break the promise. Mentioning the dragon's blessing, Aaron states that it is time to use it, causing Cheryl to ask if they were not supposed to hide it till the end. In response, Aaron states that dying at the hands of the Emperor is not included in the end he talked about and suggests that they should begin. Cheryl starts thinking that her brother's words must have a reason behind them, and she activates a magic spell, causing a portal to appear in front of them. As she walks towards the portal, Rommel calls out to her, expressing his surprise at her ability to use magic. Turning around, she smiles, remarking that she might not have told him about her ability. Crossing through the portal, all three of them enter a frozen land and reach the end of a cliff. Cheryl states that it might not work since she has not tried it for a long time. She begins casting, and a huge ball of fire forms above them. Casting similar spells simultaneously, she causes a huge wheel of inferno to form, leaving Rommel shocked. Using that spell, she strikes a mountain far away from them, causing its tip to get separated, which intensifies Rommel's astonishment. Cheryl, who seems unmoved by her spell, remarks that it was barely over the 7th circle, causing Rommel to express his astonishment at her high-tier magician abilities. Acknowledging that Cheryl is indeed a high-ranking magician, she states that it's still not enough to face the entire Imperial army. Eren agrees, noting that she needs to become more powerful while feeling astonished since, according to the Duke's diary, she was only a 5th circle mid-ranked magician, not an archmage. Meanwhile, Cheryl mentions that her skills are nothing compared to her brother's, prompting Rommel to turn to Eren and ask if that's true. In response, Eren suggests that he should give it a try and draws his sword. Feeling a little nervous, he remembers that the previous day he was reading the diary of the Duke and came to know that he is a Grandmaster-ranked swordsman. Wondering if he really had such great power, Eren got up from the chair and walked towards the book rack. Considering that no one was powerful from the start, he took out a book on basic Imperial swordsmanship and started to learn the technique from it. Remembering that, Eren raises his sword in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy, and uses the technique of piercing wind, launching a powerful slash. As a result of such a powerful move, the mountain gets divided into two, followed by its complete destruction. Considering that, despite not going directly for that mountain, his attempt was successful, Eren stands confidently while Rommel is taken aback by his power. The next day, a dragon flies above the territory and suddenly senses the blessing it granted a human several millennia ago. Taking a flip in the air, the dragon rushes toward the territory, transforming into a bird, and then lands on the ground, assuming a human form. Looking at the capital in front of him, the dragon wonders if he should go and see the humans who received his blessing. A few days ago, when Eren regressed as the Duke, he read the diary of the Duke and learned that Uncle Zerone, with the help of the feudal lord, pressurized his father and usurped the throne. Soon after their father died, he and Cheryl had to leave the kingdom because they were chased away. The reason they were able to survive was because of the condition and oath that Uncle Zerone took with his father to protect them. In order to prevent them from coveting the throne for the rest of their lives, Zerone made Eren live as the Duke of the Brahn territory on the outskirts of the continent. This place was a small fortress built on barren land where even the crops could not grow, and was under continuous attack by monsters. With the blessing of the dragon that both he and his sister had at the time of their birth, both of them had Grandmaster-level abilities. Despite having the powers to resolve all the problems in the territory, Eren decided to keep a low profile and hide his powers in order to keep the oath that his father had made. Reading all that, Eren closed the diary, wondering if a promise to the dead was more important than the lives of the living. Meanwhile, in the Territory Plaza, a child who was badly hurt while playing a game receives treatment from a saintess, causing his hand to become completely fine without even hurting. She states that his parents must be worried. Cecilia, the saintess, tells him that he should not play dangerous games, and the child complies, causing her to compliment him for being a good child. Just then, she hears an announcement revealing the order of the Duke for everyone to gather at the plaza. A little later, as they gather, they become confused looking at Eren, who is standing on a stone. People become confused, wondering why he intends to make a speech, while feeling frustrated considering that he never says anything useful. Meanwhile, one of them states that their Duke has gotten very strange these days and has hired all the knights who were jobless and is training them. Hearing their remarks, Eren thinks that it is natural for them to make such comments, considering the personality of the original Duke and his negligence toward his duty. A few moments later, he starts speaking, revealing that orcs have increased in number and are targeting their territory, which has made it difficult for them to get food. But they cannot just leave it be. Hearing that, the people do not seem to be shocked, remarking that the orcs have been doing these things for a long time. Observing their indifference, Eren asks if they are ready to sit still and become a target for those creatures, or if they want to follow him to fight for survival. Hearing that, all of the people become shocked, considering it very strange for their Duke to show concern for them. Meanwhile, Eren goes on to declare that their territory is no longer protected and, from then on, they are going to be the invaders. While the people become perplexed, Eren explains that the orcs, who pile up all the grain in their warehouses, are even wealthier than humans, causing them to become shocked. Looking at their reaction, Eren realizes that they have finally taken the bait and smiles, encouraging them to plunder those monsters and become rich. In response, all of them get determined to defeat the orcs and become rich, supporting Eren in his decision. Standing among them, the dragon, disguised as a human, looks at Eren with surprise, wondering if he is the one who got the blessing, remarking that he is an individual with a lot of potential. The dragon summons a piece of paper in his hand. Sometime later, Eren is busy arguing with his treasurer in the castle. As the argument grows more heated, someone knocks at the door of the room, causing them to turn around in frustration. Entering the room, Rommel states that a person with a letter of recommendation from Duke Rainan has arrived, making both of them surprised. Entering the room, the person, who turns out to be the dragon disguised in human form, introduces himself as Canis, stating that he has come there at the recommendation of Duke Rainan. Taking the letter from his hand, Eren remembers that Canis was the same person who stated he was a strategist but left 1 year later in his last life. Opening the letter, he begins to read, stating that it has been 3 years since he left for the Brand territory. Considering the situation and his territory, the letter states that a competent strategist has been sent to him along with some funding, with the hope that he will make good use of it. Reading the letter, Eren recalls that Duke Rainan was a very loyal servant of his father, but then becomes surprised upon reading about the funding sent to him. Hearing about the funding, the treasurer also becomes surprised, while Canis reveals it to be 50,000 gold. Considering it to be a very small amount, the treasurer becomes disappointed, stating that the Duke has become less generous after losing his power. However, Eren, who seems satisfied even with the little amount, states that this will help him with more armor and keeping the territory clean. Hearing that, the treasurer becomes confused. Eren explains that it is better to invest the leftover money, and if they maintain cleanliness, people will not fall sick, which will indirectly contribute to the stability of their territory. Considering it to be a little unrealistic yet good logic, Canis becomes astonished, realizing that Eren cares a lot about his people along with hygiene. However, the treasurer becomes frustrated with his plans and walks out of the room, stating that he's not going to play any part in it. After he leaves, Eren turns to Canis, considering his arrival to be perfect timing. However, he remarks that despite being sent by Duke Rainan, he cannot put him in a position of great importance right away, and Canis agrees. Eren states that he would like to see his capability as a strategist in the orc campaign, asking if he can do that. Despite feeling frustrated at a human testing his capability, Canis states that strategy is his specialty, telling him to leave it to him. While Eren shares his wish to get along well, Eren then thinks to himself about taking a lot of benefit from Canis in the next 3 years. On the other hand, Canis also finds him to be a very interesting individual. While he is thinking, Eren shares his intention of making dungeons after the war is over, asking what Canis thinks about it. This turns out to be something very strange, which makes Canis shocked. 1 week later, Eren stands on a rock in front of numerous knights and states that they are already aware of the strategy, asking if anyone needs more explanation. In response, everyone stands silent. Observing this, Eren takes it as a sign that they have understood everything and orders them to depart right away. He declares that this day is going to be the day when they will destroy the orcs. In response, the entire army raises their weapons in determination, and the palace gates are opened with Eren leading the army as they depart for the mission. Standing in front of the Black Forest within his territory, Eren remembers an event that took away his castle and made it the hiding place for creatures. He recalls how those creatures cut off all their food supply lines, leading to starvation in their territory after a few years. Clenching his fist, he vows to get rid of the root of all these problems beforehand. While he's thinking, Rommel approaches him and states that they have found a group of kobold skirmishers, causing Eren to ask how many there were. In response, Rommel reveals that there were 5 groups, each comprising 6 members. Hearing that, Eren calls out to Cheryl, who looks out of the camp and sees Eren giving her a signal, which she understands. She states that she will be coming out. Taking her magic staff, she exits the camp and summons a fireball, launching it towards the forest. In the forest, the groups of kobold skirmishers, who are getting instructions from their group leader, are struck by these explosions and die. Realizing that the explosions were much greater than anticipated, Eren becomes anxious and turns to Cheryl, forbidding her from using such powerful attacks that would gather the attention of the Emperor. However, in response, she starts to tease him, causing him to think that he should not have brought her with him if he had known her intentions. Seeing his expression, Canis remarks that the truth has to come out sooner or later, and he cannot tell his troops to keep quiet just for fear of getting noticed. Understanding this, Eren turns to Canis and asks if he found the location. Canis agrees. One day before their dispatch, Canis had explained to him the strategy of bringing out all the monsters to a favorable location and then fighting them there. Hearing this, Eren became a little confused, but Canis explained that it would decrease the number of casualties for them. Canis revealed that the orc tribe had 2,000 members while they only had 500, which would still lead to a great number of casualties no matter what. While everyone sat quietly, Canis went on to state that since they were going to be on the offensive, they needed to be more careful regarding the area they would be fighting. Canis explained that they would need 100 cavalrymen to lure the orcs, which surprised Eren. He asked if they would be using the cavalrymen as bait, but Canis explained that their soldiers would be mobile, making it difficult for the monsters to catch them. On their way, the monsters would also be targeted by the other soldiers. He further stated that they would lure the rest of them to the bottom of the hill and surround them with shieldmen, forcing them to surrender. After hearing the entire plan quietly, Eren decided to go with it, finding it to be an impressive one. As a result of the massive explosion in the forest, the orcs come out of their tribe, finding the countless dead bodies of kobold skirmishers. Picking those dead bodies up, they begin to walk back inside. Realizing that the monsters are on the move, Canis states that these are not normal orcs and are likely preparing for battle as soon as they realize something is wrong. In that case, he suggests Eren capture them and use them as slaves. Hearing that, Eren turns on in surprise, while Canis explains that it is going to be beneficial for the dungeon development, which Eren had mentioned earlier. Hearing this, Eren remarks that it is a good idea but wonders if the orcs are going to follow the orders of a human like him, considering that such creatures only follow the orders of dragons. In response, Canis states that orcs are the type of creatures that follow the orders of anyone with overwhelming power, and he does not need to be a dragon for that. Stating that he will think about it later, Eren remarks that he does not want extra casualties to occur just because of his greed. To begin their plan, Eren calls out to Cheryl, instructing her to move to the woods with her troops, while Rommel is tasked with creating a formation with the shieldmen behind the hill. He then turns to Canis, telling him to stay at the top of the hill and wait, to which Canis complies. Eren, pulling out his sword, then commands the remaining troops and proceeds forward with them. Meanwhile, the leader of the orcs, Kuruk, sits on a chair, feasting on meat, when another orc approaches him, informing him of the arrival of humans. Hearing this, Kuruk, the orc chief, becomes frustrated and asks where they are. His subordinate reveals that they are in the Black Forest. Chief Kuruk, remarking that the cowardly people hiding behind the castle walls have finally come out, declares that it will be the death of all of them. Going to the top of his castle, he tells the orcs about the arrival of humans, commanding them to kill them all and raid the castle. He orders them to release the Minotaur, and they open the doors of the prison house, leading a gigantic Minotaur to emerge. Letting out a loud roar, the monster joins the army of orcs, while Kuruk encourages them to kill the humans and commands them to leave the castle with his army. Flying above the hill, Canis, having transformed into a small bird again, suddenly hears a voice and finds the entire orc army proceeding forward at great speed. Watching this, he captures the image in his magic ball, anticipating the power of humans during this war. Meanwhile, Eren also proceeds forward with his army and finds the orcs coming toward him, prompting him to command his army to get into a charge formation. Raising his sword in the air, he commands his knights to charge, pressing forward at great speed. Both armies soon come face to face, leading to a dangerous clash between 100 soldiers and 2,000 orcs. Using his excellent swordsmanship, Eren leads his army and continues to kill the orcs, making a path for them to proceed forward. Realizing that there are still a large number of monsters surrounding them, Eren thinks they need to push a little more. Just then, a gigantic axe suddenly comes in his direction, causing him to lean backward and dodge it. Surprised, he looks at the massive Minotaur standing in front of him, roaring loudly, which forces him and all his soldiers to cover their ears, unable to bear the loud noise. However, considering that they cannot give up so easily, he turns back to his army, telling them not to stop and to keep moving forward, which confuses them. Leaving them, he starts to charge forward, raising his sword to kill the orcs coming toward him. However, he remembers Canis's suggestion to use these creatures to fulfill his dungeon development motive. Considering this, he avoids killing the creatures and simply hits the orcs with his sword, knocking them down. Seeing the orcs continuously coming at him, Eren realizes that his army has angered them enough. Having fulfilled his motive, he turns back to his army, stating that the monsters are too many and instructs them to retreat. They start running away, which confuses the orcs. Realizing that the humans are fleeing after initiating the battle, the orcs start shouting, determined to catch them. Making its way through the orcs, the Minotaur comes forward and starts to follow them at great speed. Seeing the monster closing in, the knights become anxious and call out to Eren, stating that it is about to catch up to them. In response, Eren declares that he will deal with the monster himself, telling all of them to hurry up and run to the hill. With that, he turns again and moves toward the monster while all of his soldiers keep running towards the hill. As the Minotaur is about to launch an attack on him, Eren keeps proceeding forward, vowing not to lose a single one of his comrades. Charging forward at great speed, he launches a powerful attack on the Minotaur, causing it to crash to the ground, defeated in an instant. Afterward, he turns around to find all his soldiers looking at him in astonishment instead of following his command and running toward the hill. Relieved that he won't have to carry the monster on his own, he calls out to one of the knights, instructing him to tie up the Minotaur and hide it in the forest. Confused by this order, the knight asks if he's not going to kill it, to which Eren agrees, stating that it might be useful to them later. The knight complies. While they are tying up the Minotaur, one of them points in a certain direction, revealing that the orcs are coming after them again. Standing at a distance, Kuruk, who is leading the orcs, vows to defeat the humans instead of allowing them to escape the forest. Just then, the sky suddenly lightens up, causing them to look up and find countless balls of fire above their heads. These balls of fire lead to a massive explosion, killing many of the orcs. Realizing that Cheryl is shooting them recklessly instead of leaving some of them for his dungeon project, Eren has no choice but to retreat and go away. Watching him, Kuruk becomes enraged and commands the remaining monsters to catch him, vowing to avenge his fallen brother at the hands of those humans. Following the soldiers, Kuruk reaches the bottom of the hill, determined to catch them, when he suddenly collides with something and falls back. Confused, he looks up to find countless strong shields held by the knights, blocking their path, which shocks him. Appearing from behind the shields, Eren states that all the orcs have been surrounded. He presents them with a way to get out alive through a duel between two leaders, with the losing one becoming the slave of the other. In response, Kuruk states that he cannot trust humans, while feeling a little frightened at the thought of losing to them. Meanwhile, Eren declares that he will swear on his pride as a knight, telling Kuruk to do the same on his pride as an orc. However, Kuruk replies that humans do not have any pride in the first place, which enrages Eren. This causes him to forget the negotiation and call out to the soldiers holding shields. However, as the soldiers are about to crush all the orcs, Kuruk reluctantly accepts the challenge, telling Eren to remember his promise after the battle. In response, Eren walks inside the circle of shields as Kuruk suddenly rushes forward, launching an attack. However, Eren remains still, a smile on his face. As Kuruk's powerful strike lands, a cloud of dust spreads everywhere. But as the dust settles, Kuruk finds Eren standing beside him, unscathed, and becomes confused. He realizes that Eren successfully dodged the attack. Eren continues to dodge Kuruk's charging blows, realizing that the blessing of the dragon is helping him. His body moves instinctively before his brain can react. Frustrated by Eren's evasiveness, Kuruk begins cursing him, which only enrages Eren. Piercing his sword into the ground, Eren declares it's time to teach Kuruk a lesson, intending to fight bare-handed. Seeing this, Rommel is shocked, remarking that it's not wise for a swordsman to throw away his sword during a fight. But Eren reassures him, stating that he's just trying to teach the creature a lesson. Seeing Eren throw away his weapon, Kuruk does the same, deciding to confront him bare-handed. As they stand face to face, Rommel worries that Eren is at a great disadvantage without his sword. He knows that orcs are built several times stronger than a normal adult and that their nails are as tough as steel, against which Eren should be no match. As Kuruk comes towards him, Eren notices how slow his movements are. Wondering if they are really that slow, Eren effortlessly evades Kuruk's attack. When Kuruk tries to punch him, Eren wonders if he can take the hit, but easily dodges it, getting only slightly hurt. Smiling, Eren realizes that the punch didn't hurt much after all. Exhausted by his failed attempts, Kuruk stands at a distance, while Eren, astonished at how little damage he's taken, watches. The knights, seeing their lord seemingly overpowered in the battle, begin to worry about their fate if they become slaves. However, Kuruk, determined to win, declares that he will make all the humans his slaves. Suddenly, Eren disappears from Kuruk's sight, confusing him. Eren reappears right above Kuruk and slaps him hard across the face. The powerful hit sends Kuruk crashing to the ground at a distance. As Kuruk gets up, he realizes Eren is using stealth magic and angrily accuses him of cowardice. Just then, Eren appears right in front of him again, delivering another powerful slap that sends Kuruk flying backward. Seeing Kuruk about to fall on them, the knights quickly form a shield wall, causing Kuruk to strike the shields and go flying back once more. Eren catches up to him, seizes him by the head, and swings him around, draining him of all his strength before slamming him to the ground. Kuruk, now powerless, pleads for mercy. In the next moment, Eren raises both his hands and strikes Kuruk with such force that he knocks him out, successfully concluding their orc subjugation mission. Some time later, Kuruk regains consciousness, finding himself tied to a chair in his own castle, now under human control. Eren, standing beside him, gazes at the countless orcs standing in front of the castle, surrounded by soldiers. He declares that he won't kill them. Instead, they will become slaves of the humans. As the orcs stare at him in confusion, Eren explains that they will work to provide services to the people in his territory, receiving food and hunting facilities in return. However, seeing the orcs' expressionless faces and receiving no response, Eren grows frustrated and threatens to treat them as he did their leader if they don't reply. Frightened, the orcs quickly comply. In response, Eren states that as punishment for wasting his time, and to make them reflect on their actions, they will be stripped of all the food in their storage. Some time later, Eren returns to his territory with all the food and resources the orcs possessed, causing his people to celebrate and praise him for his victory. Turning to Rommel, Eren instructs him to gather all the orcs and take them inside the portal created by Cheryl. The portal leads to a snowy region. There, Eren wields his great sword and slashes through the mountains, causing the creatures to tremble in fear at his immense power. As they kneel before the power of a dragon, Eren instructs them to raise their heads and tells them to remember what happened to the mountain, as well as their place in the world. The next day, Kuruk returns to his castle, revealing that the other members of his tribe, having not witnessed Eren's power, are preparing to seek revenge. Eren warns him sternly that if even a single orc rebels, he will eradicate their entire species. Complying, Kuruk flees, followed by his subordinates. Canis enters, remarking on how impressive it is that Eren has truly made the orcs his slaves. Eren explains that the orcs seem to have mistaken him for a dragon, which made it easier to control them. Canis, smiling at first, then warns him that dragons never forget those who impersonate them, asking if Eren is aware of that risk. Eren calmly explains that he never claimed to be a dragon. The orcs misunderstood on their own, so he decided to go along with it. Canis laughs, realizing the creatures were merely terrified by Eren's power. Eren agrees, stating that his powers are indeed strong enough to be mistaken for those of a dragon, which leaves Canis confused. Telling him not to worry, Eren instructs Canis to share the news with the others and informs him that they will have a meeting within the next hour. Canis complies and leaves, while Eren remains on the roof, deep in thought. He reflects on the real Eren's power to protect his people and questions if his promise to the king was that important. However, since he is not the true Eren, he decides to avoid the noble ways that only appear promising and instead use the ways of a butler to protect his territory. Remembering Zerone, the cruel emperor, he resolves to prepare for the upcoming fight that will decide their destiny. Later, at the meeting with all the high-ranking officials of the territory, Eren begins by stating that their success in dealing with the orcs was only possible because of Canis. Hearing this, Cheryl becomes sad and disappointed, feeling overlooked despite her significant efforts. Canis, however, humbly credits Eren for their ability to persuade the orcs. Frustrated by the lack of recognition, Cheryl speaks up, reminding everyone that she was the one launching the fireballs. Instead of acknowledging her contribution, Eren remarks that he didn't ask her to shoot and blames her for unnecessarily killing potential laborers. This only deepens Cheryl's frustration, leading her to tease him in response. Ignoring her, Eren shifts the focus to the main agenda, revealing that now that their usable land has increased fivefold, they must consider how to utilize it. He introduces his idea of developing dungeons on the newly acquired land, which shocks everyone present. Max, the territory's administrator, asks if Eren plans to use the dungeons as tourist attractions. In response, Eren turns to Canis, asking if the draft is ready. Canis nods, revealing that despite his busy schedule, he managed to complete the final draft. He then places the blueprint for the dungeon development project on the table. As the members examine the detailed document, they are astonished by Canis's work. Aston, after reviewing the entire document, begins to clap in appreciation but points out that the profit model is missing by 2%. Confused, Canis asks for clarification. Eren then reveals that the missing element is the necessary viciousness to trap adventurers visiting the dungeons by throwing them into the pit of light and turning them into slaves. Shocked by Eren's suggestion, Max argues that such a plan will ruin his reputation as royalty. Eren counters, asserting that survival takes precedence over maintaining a good image. He argues that even royals, despite their status, would face dire consequences if they couldn't secure their basic needs, such as food. He emphasizes the necessity of ensuring everyone's survival over concerns about reputation. Hearing this, Canis laughs, noting that Eren transcends conventional logic. He assures Eren that he will incorporate this method into the plan. Max, feeling disappointed and considering it madness, grows concerned about the future of their territory if such a plan continues. The next day, Aaron leaves the castle to survey the territory. After inspecting the condition, he turns to the treasurer and asks if the sanitation project is truly being implemented. The treasurer confirms, stating that he is dedicating all his efforts and even using the winter food budget to support the project, trusting that it will ultimately bring more food to the territory. Hearing that, Aaron reveals that he is not going to do anything like that, and they should have at least a little leftover budget. The treasurer asks what he means by leftover budget. They have already spent a lot on buying armor for the orc raid. However, looking at his surroundings, the treasurer states that their territory has already become much cleaner, and they will not need to spend more money on maintaining hygiene. Enraged to hear that, Aaron asserts that they need to keep their environment clean in order to avoid diseases spreading, telling him to never stop the process. Disappointed to hear that, the treasurer remarks that they are all going to die at this rate of spending, while being aware of the possibility of failing to keep up the sanitation as well as arrange food in the future. Aaron wonders if there is a solution to this problem. While he is wondering, a soldier comes to Rommel, informing him of a priest illegally performing surgery again. Hearing that, Aaron quickly turns around with surprise, looking at a huge crowd of people gathered at a distance. Walking towards the crowd, Rommel tells him that the Vivian Order priest must be healing people again. Hearing about the Vivian Orders, Aaron remembers that it is the religion that gets overshadowed by the Purse Order and disappears in a few years. However, hearing about healing, he suddenly gets an idea. Meanwhile, a soldier goes near the crowd of people and declares that a person from an authorized religion healing people on this land is strictly forbidden. Hearing that, the people turn around and start to leave the place quietly. Sitting in the middle of the crowd, the priest, who turns out to be Cecilia, apologizes, saying that she was not aware of it, and starts to walk away. Calling out to her, the father of the child she was healing states that his child is going to die if she leaves like this, while other people also start protesting against this rule. Going near the soldier, the person starts to express his anger, asking if they are going to take responsibility if his son dies. Trying to calm them down, Cecilia states that they are going to return some other day and it is best for all the people to go back. However, just then, Aaron calls her out, telling her to stop, causing her to turn around in confusion. Walking towards them, Aaron states that they can continue healing, making them surprised. Remarking them to be good people helping his citizens, he says that he does not have any reason to kick them out and they can continue what they have been doing. Hearing that, all of the people start to celebrate, while Cecilia expresses her gratitude for such a decision. Aaron instructs that the rest of the priests can continue with the treatment and Cecilia should follow him, and she complies. Considering that their affiliation to a different religion does not matter to him until they are providing treatment for free, Aaron decides to make them continue healing like this. Sometime later, in the conference room, Cecilia expresses her excitement by embracing him, making him shocked to see her doing this. Saints should not do this. With her face beaming with happiness, Cecilia asks him if he was serious about his decision to build a temple on his land. In response, Aaron states that there is no reason for him not to do that, causing the treasurer to become frustrated. Losing his patience, he states that he cannot allow it since they have no remaining budget and if they raise a temple right now, they will have no emergency funds left over. Aaron states that they also have some additional funds hidden, telling him to use those. Frustrated to hear that, the treasurer states that this was the money the previous emperor left for them to use in difficult situations. However, Aaron simply replies that the situation is also dire, leaving no choice for him but to comply. Hearing all that, Cecilia begins to express her gratitude to him, but he interrupts her, telling her to think about thanking him after hearing his complete condition. Hearing that, she becomes a little confused while Aaron gives a smile, revealing that he has a condition for building a temple on his land. Aaron states that he has a condition for building the temple and reveals it to be the condition of holy water production. He mentions having heard about the possibility of creating holy water at the temple and asks Cecilia to promise to produce it and help develop the territory. Cecilia quickly agrees to the request, promising to produce the holy water. Eren specifies that she will have to produce it free of charge and in any quantity he desires, to which she also agrees. A few weeks later, Canis rushes to Eren with news that the orcs have seemingly discovered a hidden dungeon near the fortress they inhabit. Hearing that, Eren asks what kind of dungeon it is, and Canis reveals that Kuruk has described it as a useless, abandoned dungeon. Surprised by this information, Eren inquires whether the dungeon does not appear in ancient documents or if the owner's name is not listed anywhere in the agreement. Canis mentions that they couldn't find any reference to it and that after its owner disappeared, it has become a den for various monsters. Eren asks if Canis plans to develop the place, to which Canis responds that he doesn't see any way to bring in adventurers, no matter how he looks at it. Revealing his idea to be related to the elixir of eternal life, Eren states that they will spread a rumor that a cure-all potion exists in that dungeon. Asking if he is curious, Eren tells him to follow him and takes him to the temple, where different priests are busy healing the people. Looking at Cecilia, Canis becomes surprised, sensing the strong divine power surrounding her body, and wonders if such a thing could occur in this kind of place. Meanwhile, Cecilia turns around, finds them standing behind her, and quickly gets up and runs towards them, feeling the intensity of the light emanating from her body getting stronger as she comes near. Canis looks at everyone acting normally and wonders if they are unable to see that power. Meanwhile, Eren gets out of Cecilia's way, causing her to crash to the ground. She quickly gets up, feeling a little embarrassed. Feeling a bit awkward himself, Eren asks about how the construction is going and if there are any problems. In response, Cecilia states that they are about halfway done, causing him to ask if she can create the holy water in that case. Agreeing, she turns to the statue of the divine and starts praying, causing the water placed in front of the statue to start shining brightly. Observing this, Canis is astonished, realizing that this kind of divine power couldn't belong to a human and wonders about Cecilia's true identity. Meanwhile, Eren takes a small amount of the water and gives it to the treasurer, suggesting that it will have the best effect on him due to his old age and sensitivity. Taking the water from him, the treasurer states that a person can never be sustained by just drinking water unless it's the Empire's finest healing potion. However, as soon as he takes a sip, he starts feeling greatly refreshed and becomes as energetic as a young man, commenting that he feels 5 years younger than his age. The old man remarks that it seems to be precisely like the healing potion, astounded by its impact. Eren turns to Cecilia, who stands holding his arm and becomes startled, quickly moving away. Considering the effectiveness of the holy water to be extraordinary, Eren realizes how significant Cecilia is for their goals. He calls out to Canis, who steps forward to listen. Approaching him, Eren whispers if there will be any problems if they use this water to spread rumors about the elixir of eternal life. In response, Canis states that there isn't a single place on the entire continent where holy water is as effective as this, and it should suffice to fulfill their purpose. With the supply settled, Eren states that they should now prepare to conquer the dungeon, remarking that it is completely all right. Cecilia states that she wants to introduce him to someone, making him confused about who it is. Cecilia reveals it to be the Holy Knight Captain of the Vivian Order, causing Eren to express his surprise and ask if the Vivian Order also has warriors. She explains that, unlike other warriors, the knights belonging to the Holy Order specialize in defense. They cloak their bodies and divine power under masks, neutralizing their opponent's attacks with their defense power, which is considered to be equivalent to an entire castle. However, she feels a little sad, stating that she is the only remaining captain in the entire order. Eren comes closer and asks if that's why they decided to come to this territory. Just then, someone calls out to him from behind, prompting him to turn around and see a woman dressed as a knight, stating that a person like him cannot approach the saintess. Confused by this remark, Eren gazes at her silently while she mentions that she came to the territory because she heard a temple was to be built, but in reality, it's a very weak territory. She considers the territory to be in a very hopeless condition, prompting Cecilia to interrupt, addressing her as Lady Bianca and stating that she cannot behave this way towards the Lord. Meanwhile, Eren shares his confusion about her calling it a weak territory, to which Bianca responds that, unlike Cecilia, she will only show loyalty to those who are strong. Eren asks if she has ever sworn loyalty to anyone in that case, to which she replies that no one has ever been strong enough for that. Responding with a smirk, Eren asks if she would like to make a bet, which leaves her confused. Eren states that the person who lands 3 good hits during their fight will be considered the winner, and if she loses, she will have to swear her allegiance to him. Hearing this, Bianca also smirks, considering him a very arrogant individual, while Eren responds with a smile. Sometime later, both Eren and Bianca stand face to face with each other, ready to fight. The battle starts with one of the knights stating that there is no point in watching, as the results are obvious. Another knight gives a sigh, while another states that, without even using his sword, their lord utilized the sleep destruction magic to defeat the orc, which proves how powerful he is. Considering that there is a possibility for Bianca to get severely injured, stating that there is nothing else they can do, one of them suggests calling the castle knight order captain. Meanwhile, Eren picks a twig from the ground, causing Bianca to get enraged, remarking that it was very arrogant to go against her with a mere twig. In response, Eren states that even the twig will be sad upon hearing those words from her, causing her anger to intensify. Putting her shield in front of her, she starts to pray to the divine to bestow upon her the power to destroy her enemy. A few moments later, an overwhelming energy starts coursing through her veins, while Eren, who seems bored after watching her, asks why she is taking so long to prepare for the attack, telling her to stop teasing him. Bianca proceeds forward at great speed while Eren raises the twig in the air, charging it with overwhelming energy. He then brings it forward and launches an attack, causing the powerful strike to hit Bianca's shield, leading her to crash to the ground. Teasing her again, Eren states that she cannot look down on the twig if she is going to faint after a single attack. With that, he strikes the shield with the twig again, causing it to start cracking and then shatter apart, leaving Bianca shocked and realizing how incredibly powerful he is. Bianca kneels down in front of him, while Eren repeats the condition of winning, to land 3 strikes on the opponent. He brings his twig forward and launches the first hit, causing her to crash to the ground while all the soldiers cover their eyes, unable to witness such cruelty. Meanwhile, Eren launches the second hit, causing her intense pain, yet she has no choice but to bear it. Launching the third and final hit, Eren causes her to crash to the ground, stating that he has met the condition of landing 3 hits. Eren warns her never to insult him or his territory again. However, instead of feeling embarrassed, Bianca gets up and turns to him with a smile, stating that he is the first person to have been mean to her. As she is about to say something further, Cecilia covers her mouth, causing Eren to become confused. Apologizing for her behavior, Cecilia states that Bianca must be confused after the battle. While feeling a little awkward, Eren states that it is all right and turns to Rommel, instructing him to gather those who went for the dungeon subjugation. After some time, the troops gather in front of him along with Cheryl, Canis, and Rommel himself, remarking that there are only 100 soldiers who can be mobilized, excluding those on territory defense. Eren remarks that this is very little, stating that the population of their territory is 5,000. Canis explains that their protection can only be possible if they mobilize only 1/10 of the soldiers. Agreeing with this, Eren states that they need to attract more population, for which they will need to develop their territory further. Canis assures him that he will formulate a strategy to do so. Just then, Aaron suddenly remembers that in his past life, around this time, because of what happened earlier, Count Grey and Count of Men's territory had a large number of migrants. Watching him engrossed in his thoughts, Canis calls out to him, causing him to realize that he had to address the soldiers. Turning to the soldiers, he states that they are going on a mission of dungeon subjugation, in which they will capture the place and dig up the treasures. Raising their weapons in determination, all of them then begin to move towards the dungeon. As he reaches near the dungeon, Kuruk, who is waiting for him at the entrance, kneels down, paying his respect. Surprised to see him, Aaron dismounts the horse and asks if everything is all right. Kuruk, who seems a little worried, replies that there is something wrong, making Aaron confused. Entering the dungeon, Kuruk leads them to a place where a lot of orcs are lying dead on the ground. Kuruk reveals that they started to act weird all of a sudden. Calling out to them, Cheryl, who seems to be feeling cold, asks if everyone is feeling this way or if it is just her. Just then, the orcs that were lying dead on the ground suddenly begin to rise with fierce killing intent in their eyes, making them confused. Watching Aaron and his fellows in front of them, the orcs raise their weapons and start to rush towards them to attack. Seeing that, Kuruk becomes shocked, considering that Aaron will annihilate their race if they do that. In order to stop them, he proceeds forward and raises his weapon in the air, hitting one of them who falls upon the rest of the monsters, leading them all to crash to the ground. However, as soon as they crash to the ground, a spirit suddenly appears, causing Canis to become shocked and reveal that they are ghosts. Just then, the ghost starts to rush towards Kuruk, who tries to hit it just like the orcs. However, instead of falling back, it passes through Kuruk's weapon and proceeds forward towards Aaron at great speed. Watching that, Aaron pulls out his sword and blocks the ghost with it, causing it to disperse. Then a lot of similar but smaller ghosts start to move around them, making them shocked as they watch the countless ghosts swarm them. Cheryl becomes frustrated and summons a fireball with her staff. Watching this, the ghosts suddenly become startled and, instead of running away, start to rush towards Cheryl. However, before they can get near her, Aaron comes forward and slashes them with his sword while Cheryl uses her magic of fire spray simultaneously. As a result, the fireball she summoned begins to spew fire, burning all the spirits and causing them to disappear. Just then, Rommel calls out to Aaron and Cheryl, and they turn around in confusion, finding him and Kuruk fighting with the ghosts. Rommel remarks that these creatures are impossible to cut through with a sword. Stating that he forgot to mention something, Canis reveals that since they are spirits, only magic can work against them. Hearing that, Rommel becomes frustrated, asking why he did not mention this earlier. Meanwhile, Cheryl brings her staff forward, telling everyone to stand still and causing numerous fireballs to emerge from it and strike the weapons of all their fellows. This causes their weapons to get imbued with magic powers, while the wooden weapon of Kuruk burns to ashes, making him shocked. Proceeding forward with their strong weapons, Rommel and Aaron then start to deal with the ghosts, killing them one by one while spreading great destruction in the dungeon. Realizing that the humans have started to defeat them, the ghosts combine, letting out a huge scream that causes them to cover their ears. As a result of combining, they transform into a gigantic creature that is much more powerful than the rest. Proceeding forward, the creature is about to launch an attack when Aaron suddenly appears and launches a powerful slash, causing the creature to disappear instantly. Walking towards the book rack at a distance, Canis remarks that these creatures were not there to fight but were protecting something. Going through the books, Cheryl suddenly finds something and calls out to Aaron, telling him to take a look. Confused, he turns to her and finds a book in her hand titled Legacy of the Ancients. She reveals that during the era of the Demon Empire, a group of people called monks practiced something in this place. Reading further, she finds it to be a guide related to mental strength training and becomes astonished, while Aaron becomes confused about its meaning. Cheryl explains that, unlike magicians who normally use magic, these people introduced a completely different idea called mental strength. Hearing about the mental strength training, Eren expresses his astonishment, remarking that this is the first time he has heard of such a technique. He recalls that in his past life, this method was known to increase the capacity for storing mana within the body, even with age. Turning to Canis, Eren inquires if he has heard of anything like this before. Canis explains that if Cheryl's description is accurate, it means even normal people can acquire magical abilities through mental strength training. Eren gets the idea of training all the troops and inhabitants of his territory to use magic through this technique. However, Canis argues that releasing such important information might not be beneficial, pointing to the destruction spread throughout the dungeon. He suggests that the method could be either orthodox or have significant side effects. Eren agrees and decides to keep this information to himself. Proceeding to the next floors of the dungeon, they continue exploring and gain valuable treasures. After completing the exploration, Eren turns to Kuruk, instructing him to take half of the treasure and leave the rest for everyone else. Canis then asks if he can take the gold. Confused, Eren asks what Canis plans to do with it. Canis explains that the dungeon's ordinary layout makes it difficult to create a sense of suspense for adventurers. Eren agrees and states that he wants additional funds to add more interesting features to the dungeon. After some time, the renovation process of the dungeon begins under Canis's supervision. After setting up the basics, Canis activates the powers of a dragon and spreads his energy throughout the dungeon. As a result, the scattered bones join together to form gigantic skeletons, and the spirits of the ghosts rise again, spreading throughout the place. To add the final touches, he adds something to the holy water in one of the compartments. After tasting it, he remarks that its taste is exquisite and that it increases lifespan by 1 year. With a smirk, he states that the only thing left is to attract customers driven mad by greed, and laughs loudly, his voice echoing throughout the entire dungeon. Some time later, a group of adventurers arrives at the gates of the Brahn territory. After getting their identities approved, they step inside, remarking on the heavy rain. The leader of the group notes that winter doesn't seem to be ending soon and observes that the soldiers have new armor. In response, a woman in the group suggests that they might have discovered a relic in their newly made dungeon, which has become a new source of income. The leader points to an extravagant guest house and asks if this is also a result of the money. The woman remarks that this indicates how warmly they are welcoming adventurers like them, and they will also contribute by spending as much as they can. The leader moves towards the guest house, opens the door and enters. The owner of the guest house recognizes him as Gerald and welcomes him. Gerald asks if the owner recently remodeled the entire building, and the owner reveals that it is all debt and explains that a new dungeon has recently opened. He suggests that they take the opportunity to enter it before everyone else. Remarking on the owner's ambition, Gerald looks on to ensure no one is listening, then gets closer and asks if he knows anything about the dungeon. The owner states that he has only heard about the dungeon's contents but will be the first to enter it. Hearing this, Gerald gives him 1 gold coin and instructs him to prepare some food and drinks for their group. The next morning, Eren sits in his room practicing mental strength techniques from the book he found. Despite the dragon's blessing within him, he seeks a technique he can control on his own, aware of the risks involved. While he is busy cultivating the energy, someone suddenly calls out to him, causing him to open his eyes and find Cecilia standing before him. Startled by her sudden appearance, Eren asks what she is doing there. Cecilia presents him with a plate of sandwiches, saying she brought it for him. Eren, surprised, accepts the plate, and Cecilia mentions that she will be leaving. As Cecilia departs, another soldier informs Eren about the arrival of adventurers, which excites him. The next day, the adventurers head towards the dungeon, which is named the Shrine of Aten. Upon reaching the dungeon's gate, one of them reads the sign stating that entry requires a fee of 10 gold coins. The adventurers pay the gatekeepers, who then give them a document confirming their right to enter and instructions on maintaining safety until they leave. After letting them in, the gatekeepers block the entrance again, informing the remaining adventurers that they cannot enter without this proof. Gerald, one of the adventurers, protests that they've already purchased the papers, but the soldiers clarify that the fee is 10 gold coins per person, not per group. The adventurers are shocked, calling it a scam. The soldier responds that he will convey their concerns to the Lord, while noting that the elixir of eternal life within the dungeon might run out at any moment. With no other option, Gerald pays the fee for his entire group. Upon entering the dungeon, they encounter a person selling holy water, which he claims is necessary to defeat the creatures inside. Gerald, showing a bottle of holy water he already has, is told that the Vivian Church's holy water is superior. Annoyed but convinced, Gerald buys the holy water. As they proceed, they come across another board displaying a fee of 100 gold coins per person for an emergency dispatch request. The adventurers question this fee, but the seller explains that it is not unfair to pay for saving one's life with just 100 gold coins. Gerald asks what happens if they don't make a request, and the seller replies that they will not be charged. Considering the potential rewards of obtaining the elixir, the adventurers accept the conditions and enter the dungeon. Meanwhile, Aaron and Canis, watching the adventurers through a magic sphere, find the situation amusing. Aaron calls out to Kuruk, suggesting that the undead creatures might become boring due to the holy water, and instructs him to do something else. Meanwhile, on the second floor of the dungeon, the group of adventurers keeps diligently fighting against the undead monsters. After consuming the holy water they bought, Gerald feels relieved, remarking that it would have been very tough for them if they did not have this elixir. Looking at the staircase leading to the third floor, they wonder if it is the last floor, when they suddenly hear a sound and turn around, finding another ghost coming in their direction. Excited to see it, one of the adventurers remarks that it is very unoriginal and throws the bottle of holy water in its direction. However, instead of getting eliminated by the holy water, the ghost pushes the person, causing him to crash into the basement, leaving all others shocked and remarking it to be a mutant ghost. Gerald tells all of them to prepare for the battle. However, just then, countless similar creatures start to appear one after the other, causing them to realize that they have no choice but to run away. Turning on all of them, they start to descend from the stairs and reach the next floor while trembling with fear. After they leave, all the ghosts remove their masks and turn out to be Kuruk and his fellows, who start laughing at the adventurers. As the adventure party hurries down to the third floor, their leader, Gerald, pauses to glance back up at the second floor. With a sigh of relief, he wonders aloud if the mutant ghost they encountered earlier will be unable to follow them to their current location. Anna, the mage in the group, notices the darkness enveloping them, and promptly casts a light spell to illuminate the surroundings. As the light reveals their environment, Gerald's anxiety grows. He realizes they are in a labyrinth, a setting notorious for being an ideal habitat for dangerous creatures like Minotaurs. Gerald turns to the other party members who are attending to Athos, who was injured after being attacked by Kuruk from the second floor. Gerald inquires about Athos's condition, and the person checking on him shakes his head, indicating that Athos is not in a good state. Gerald decides that they should leave Athos behind for now and prioritize finding the spring of eternal life, which he believes to be less dangerous. The party then begins navigating the labyrinth on the third floor in search of the spring. As they move forward, Gerald hears a noise from behind and urgently warns his party. The party quickly turns around to see 3 spears flying towards them, but they manage to block the spears with relative ease. As the party looks around, they spot 3 orcs who have thrown the spears and are now charging toward them. Gerald urgently instructs his party to run from the orcs. In the ensuing chaos, the orcs throw more spears, injuring 2 party members who fall to the ground. Gerald quickly picks up the injured members by their arms, warning them that if they fall behind, they will die. Despite their injuries, the party continues to flee, but they soon encounter a fork in the path. Gerald is momentarily unsure of which way to go. Meanwhile, the orcs, still in pursuit, launch their spears down the left path, confirming their direction. Gerald directs his party to take the right path. As they move to the right, Gerald instructs Anna to block the path. Anna casts a spell to create a wall of ice, successfully blocking the orcs' advance. The orcs begin attacking the ice wall, and Gerald commands Anna to reinforce the ice barrier by casting her spell once more. Following Gerald's instructions, Anna casts the world of ice spell again, reinforcing the ice wall and making it thicker and more durable. However, as they progress, the party members in the front are struck by arrows from skeletons, causing them to fall in pain. Anna responds by using her continual light spell, which causes the skeletons to vanish. Amid the chaos, one of the party members accidentally triggers a trap. The walls begin to collapse, and water starts flooding in, sweeping all the party members away. After some time, Gerald wakes Anna and points in a specific direction. Anna, upon seeing what Gerald is indicating, reacts with surprise and excitement, exclaiming that they have found the spring of eternal life. As the party members see the Minotaur standing in front of the spring of eternal life, Anna is shocked and urgently tells her party to run away. The party members turn to see the Minotaur wielding an axe and advancing toward them. Overwhelmed by fear, Gerald collapses to the ground, convinced they are doomed. In his moment of despair, a sample device he had pocketed falls to the ground. Gerald recalls that he was told pressing the 3 shiny stones on the device simultaneously would rescue him and his party, but he hesitates, thinking the cost of 100 gold per person is too high. With the Minotaur closing in, Gerald decides to act. Despite his previous hesitation, he presses all 3 buttons on the device, hoping for a last-minute escape. The 2 party members with shields attempt to block the Minotaur's attack, but are completely overpowered. The force of the Minotaur's blow sends them crashing into the wall. In the midst of the chaos, Anna casts an ice bolt spell that hits the Minotaur, causing it to pause briefly. However, the Minotaur quickly recovers, grabs Anna, and slams her to the ground. As Gerald continues to frantically press the buttons on the device, he shouts in desperation, "Why aren't they coming?" Meanwhile, the Minotaur raises its axe, preparing to attack Gerald. In a state of terror, Gerald closes his eyes, resigning himself to the thought that he is about to die. Just as Gerald is about to face the Minotaur's attack, a group of knights arrives and intervenes, blocking the Minotaur's strike. Frightened by the knights, the Minotaur flees, dropping its axe as it retreats. One of the knights approaches Gerald and asks if he is all right. Gerald, visibly shaken, questions if he looks okay. The knight reassures him that, despite the situation, he saved Gerald's life and the spring of eternal life. Gerald then stands up and fills a bottle with water from the spring. The knight inquires if they should leave now, and upon receiving Gerald's approval, the knights begin to escort Gerald and his party back toward the exit. Meanwhile, in a different part of the labyrinth, Kira comforts the Minotaur, who is crying and distressed by the recent events. When Gerald emerged from the dungeon, he exclaimed in relief that they had survived. However, his joy quickly turned to confusion when he saw priests waiting for him. Surprised, he asked why the priests were there. The priests, smiling, told him they were there to provide treatment and handed him a document to sign with his thumbprint. Gerald read the document carefully and found several conditions. Special treatment costs 300 gold per person. Liability disclaimer: they guarantee survival, but are not responsible for any after effects of the treatment. Payment terms: if payment is not made immediately after treatment, a 50% interest rate per month will be applied to the fees. Debt consequences: if he cannot pay the debt, his body will belong to Aaron, the Lord of Brand territory, for 10 years. Gerald, calculating the financial implications, realized that with a 50% monthly interest rate on the 300 gold principal, he would need to pay an additional 150 gold per month until the debt was settled. This realization was cut short by the priests, who urgently reminded him that his comrades were dying and that he needed to act quickly. Flustered and seeing no other option, Gerald signed the document with his thumbprint. Later, Canis returned to the castle with a box full of gold coins and reported to Aaron that they had taken everything as instructed, including some useful slaves. Aaron praised everyone for their dedication and success, attributing their achievements to their unwavering loyalty. Seeing the gold coins, the old man Cain asked Aaron if it was a dream. Aaron assured him it was real and proposed taking advantage of their success by exploring a second dungeon. Canis and Cain agreed. Aaron recognized the profitability of this venture and used the funds to support the local people and build a town for adventurers. After a busy winter, Aaron and the people of Brand territory established an adventurers' village named Atten. From the tower overlooking the new village, Aaron reflected that despite their progress, the village still lacked sufficient manpower and noted that they couldn't rely solely on orcs to populate it. Just then, a bird arrived with a letter attached to its leg. Aaron untied and opened it, discovering that a gold mine had been found on the border between Count Grey and Count Omen, with a high likelihood of ownership disputes. Aaron smiled, thinking that attracting more people would solve their manpower issues. Later, in the meeting room, Rommel, shocked, inquired about the Territorial War. Aaron confirmed, explaining that the gold mine's discovery on the contested border was an opportunity they couldn't let Count Grey and Count Omen monopolize. Rommel pointed out that while the Count's boundary was technically part of Brand territory, it had long been controlled by Count Grey and Count Omen. Aaron acknowledged this and saw the situation as an opportunity to assert his claim, especially since both counts were contesting ownership of the gold mine. Rommel expressed concern about the feasibility of going to war, noting that the combined forces of the two counts would significantly outnumber theirs. Aaron responded by emphasizing the importance of the gold mine, not just as a resource, but as a means to assert dominance. He reminded Rommel that the two counts were originally vassals of the Duke of Brahn, and now they were his vassals, implying that he had the right to reclaim and control what was his. Cheryl expressed concern that the conflict might draw the Emperor's attention, possibly leading him to intervene. Aaron reassured her that with a justifiable cause, the Emperor wouldn't interfere and might even prefer that Aaron lose the war against the counts. He acknowledged, however, that the real issue was their military strength. Turning to Cain, Aaron was surprised when Cain slammed his hand on the table and declared that they should eliminate the counts who were unlawfully claiming territories granted to them by the Emperor. Aaron, shocked by Cain's intense reaction, asked for clarification. Cain explained that his motivation was not the gold mine, but asserting their rightful claim. He insisted he would do anything, even sell his soul, to support Aaron's cause, urging him to focus on the war. Just then, a knight burst into the meeting room with an emergency report. Count Grey and Count Omen had met in front of the mountain where the gold mine was discovered. Aaron, recognizing the significance of the development, ordered Rommel to gather the knight order immediately. They would depart right away to take action. On the mountain, Count Grey and Count Omen were embroiled in a heated argument. Count Grey, furious, shouted that he had been managing the mountain for 10 years. Count Omen countered aggressively, claiming that the land had belonged to his ancestors long before that. Count Grey, enraged, insisted that the mountain had been in his family for generations. Count Omen retorted, accusing Grey of being a fraud, pointing out that Grey had only recently claimed ownership. Their dispute escalated as they continued to hurl insults and accusations at each other. At that moment, Aaron, accompanied by his knights, arrived at the mountain where both counts were present. The soldiers of the counts, upon seeing Aaron's flag, identified it as that of the Duke of Brahn. Inside their tent, the counts wondered about the Duke's unexpected arrival. As they exited the tent, Aaron approached them on horseback, causing a cloud of dust to billow. Both counts shielded their faces from the dust. Aaron dismounted and asked them, "How are you guys?" In response, the counts bowed deeply and paid their respects, acknowledging him as the Duke. Aaron, seething with anger, confronted the counts aggressively. He shouted at them, "Now, you rotten bastards! What are you doing on my land? Get lost right now." The counts were taken aback by his outburst. Aaron continued, asserting his claim by stating that according to Empire law, the mine and any undeveloped land in question belonged to him. He demanded they leave immediately. Count Ormond, infuriated by Aaron's declaration, began to protest, but Count Grey intervened. He explained to Aaron that the land had been under their control since the time of their ancestors, and suddenly claiming it as Aaron's would place them in a difficult situation. Aaron, undeterred, drew his sword and confronted them furiously, accusing them of defying the royal family's orders and declaring that their insistence on the land was tantamount to having a death wish. Seeing the tension escalate, with both Aaron's knights and the count's soldiers drawing their swords, Canis intervened. He proposed a resolution to avoid further conflict on the spot, a territory war. This suggestion took both counts by surprise. Canis mentioned that he had heard both counts were preparing for war. Count Grey protested, noting that the preparation was initially only between the two counts. Aaron then proposed a solution where each side would mobilize 1,000 troops. He added that, given his perceived disadvantage, if he won, the counts would have to relinquish both of their cities. The counts exchanged nervous glances upon hearing the terms of Aaron's proposal. Count Grey asked for a moment to deliberate, and both counts retreated behind the tent. There, Count Grey acknowledged that Aaron's claim to the land was officially recognized by Empire law, making it difficult for the royal family to side with them if Aaron invoked these laws. Count Ormond agreed with this assessment. Count Grey then proposed a plan to address the situation. Once they had dealt with Aaron, they should split the profits from the gold mine equally. Count Ormond agreed and suggested formalizing their agreement to also divide any additional profits from any other gold or silver mines discovered. Canis, observing the counts, expressed doubt to Aaron, suggesting that the stakes of losing two villages might be too high for the counts to accept. Aaron, smiling, reassured Canis by saying, "Don't worry, there's no end to human greed." When Canis asked how Aaron was so confident, Aaron revealed that the gold mine was not just any mine, but an incredibly large one. He then whispered to Canis that this was merely a rumor he had spread. Canis, surprised, exclaimed, "No way." Aaron explained that his true goal was to secure the two villages, and the exaggerated claims about the gold mine were part of his strategy. A month earlier, Aaron received a letter informing him that there were no signs of conflict between Count Grey and Count Ormond. Reflecting on the situation, Aaron thought to himself, "I think it was around this time. Even though I'm relying on decades-old memories, it seems the nobles have no intention of fighting. If they lack a reason, I can create one myself." Determined to stir up trouble, Aaron decided to take matters into his own hands. He wrote a letter and gave instructions to spread a specific rumor that a large gold deposit had been discovered within the mines controlled by both Count Grey and Count Ormond. This would serve as the catalyst for the conflict he needed. In the present, Count Grey addressed Aaron, stating that they accepted his condition for the territorial war. However, he added that they had two conditions of their own. The first was that they would choose the location of the battle, which would take place where they currently were. Aaron could choose the timing of the conflict. Aaron then inquired about the second condition. Count Grey explained that if they won, they wanted the mountain containing their mine, along with both of their territories, to be excluded from the Bram dukedom. Additionally, this agreement would need to be formally written, signed, and notarized by the king himself. Aaron pretended to be shocked by the idea of being notarized by the king, just as Count Grey had predicted. Grey then quietly pointed out to Count Ormond that his prediction was correct. Count Grey then made it clear that without notarization by the king, there would be no territorial war. Aaron appeared to consider this deeply and then agreed, stating that they would plan the battle for 1 month from now. He began signing the document. Seeing this, both counts believed they had outmaneuvered Eren and that his agreement to their terms would seal his defeat. Eren internally realizes that the knight is about to seek the king's permission to surrender their territory, a move that aligns perfectly with Eren's own goals. As Eren and the knight descend from the mountain, Canis voices a concern, acknowledging that while the plan is unfolding as Eren intended, some challenges remain. When Eren inquires about these issues, Canis points out two key problems. First, they only have about 500 troops, which is a relatively small force. Second, since the results of their actions will be reported directly to the king, it will be challenging for either Eren or Lady Cheryl to influence the outcome significantly without drawing unwanted attention. Eren acknowledges the situation, agreeing that the presence of orcs in their territory is already causing suspicion. He suggests that they might ask Lord Cain to hire mercenaries to bolster their forces. However, Canis points out another problem. There is no gold mine, and if Lord Cain, who is funding their war efforts, discovers this truth, he might do everything in his power to prevent the war from occurring. Eren responds by considering that, while it could be difficult, they might still find a way to convince Lord Cain. He advises Canis to feign ignorance for the time being. Internally, Eren hopes that Cheryl will successfully fulfill her part of the plan. As Eren and his group approach the city gate from a distance, he notices a commotion there, which surprises him. At the gate, guards are brandishing their spears at a figure standing before them, telling the person that the Lord isn't present and to leave. The figure turns out to be an elf, who politely requests a meeting with the Lord. At that moment, Eren arrives at the gate and demands to know what's happening. Recognizing him, the god addresses Eren as my lord and acknowledges his return. The elf, hearing this, turns around and sees Eren behind her, mounted on a horse. The elf, who introduces herself as Keisha, immediately kneels before Eren, pleading for his help. She reveals that she is the daughter of the elf chief. Eren questions why the elves are now seeking his assistance after having killed innocent people within his territory. He explains that the elves from the far north, living in the forests near the dragon's nest, have chosen to isolate themselves from other species, including humans, in order to create a peaceful environment for themselves. While the elves have tried to protect their peace, their militant methods have made it difficult for the people of Bram territory, including Eren, to forgive them for their past actions. She reveals that their village was recently attacked and devastated by undead forces. Keisha offers to assist Eren if he helps them this one time, promising that the elves will then welcome his people as friends. Eren asks if she is proposing an alliance and reflects that he needs to address both the undead and the elves eventually. He agrees to help but indicates that an alliance alone is not sufficient. Keisha responds that they have some gold, which humans use, and are willing to provide it as part of their offer. Eren rejects Keisha's offer of gold and demands instead that the elves become citizens of the Bram territory. Keisha is initially surprised by this request. Eren then infers that if she has come alone, she must be in command of her people and presses her to accept his offer. Keisha responds that she lacks the authority to make such a decision. Seeing her hesitation, Eren decides to withdraw his proposal, prompting Keisha to quickly agree to his terms. Eren instructs her to follow him to draft a contract. In the meeting room, when Keisha mentions Death Knight, Rommel, Cain, and Max are shocked and rise from their seats in surprise. Keisha explains that the undead attacking her village were led by a Death Knight, accompanied by thousands of zombies and skeletons. Eren suspects that the attack might have been orchestrated by demons or a high-ranked necromancer and realizes he must act quickly to save any remaining elves. He orders a gathering at the orc stronghold in 3 hours. Rommel is tasked with preparing the night order, Cecilia with organizing the priests, and Bianca with mobilizing the holy knights. Eren and Canis will head to the orc stronghold immediately. With urgency, He rallies everyone to move swiftly to rescue the elves and secure their future citizens. Skeletons are attempting to breach the elf village, while the elves employ various spells to prevent their entry. An elf uses ice magic to create a slippery layer on the wall, causing the skeletons to slide off when they attempt to climb. In response, the Death Knight uses his magic to gather the skeletons' bones and hurl them at the wall, shattering the ice and allowing the undead to advance. As the skeletons and zombie elves begin climbing the walls, the elf chief tries to use plant magic to obstruct their progress. Despite her efforts, the magical spell proves ineffective against the relentless assault. An elf suggests to the chief that they need fire to counter the undead. The elf chief, feeling conflicted but resolute, prays for forgiveness from the spirits of the forest before giving the order to burn the attackers. Fireballs are launched, incinerating the enemies near the wall. Undeterred, the Death Knight commands a new wave of zombies to attack. As the zombies charge towards the wall, raindrops begin to fall, destroying them. The Death Knight realizes that the rain is actually holy water being dropped from gliders, providing a powerful defense against the undead. Earlier, Eren had instructed the glider squad to position themselves above the gate. As the gliders reached their target and the zombies came into range, Eren ordered the release of holy water. The soldiers followed the command, showering the attacking zombies with holy water. Next, Eren directed the knights to charge toward the elf village using the shortest route available. The knights advanced swiftly, engaging and defeating any zombies obstructing their path. Noticing the advance of the Vivian Knight Order, the Death Knight casts another spell to raise additional zombies, which begin charging toward them. Bianca, the captain of the Vivian Knight Order, commands her knights to position themselves behind their shields and begins a prayer. O Vivian, grant me the power to decimate our enemies. In response to her prayer, a golden ray of light descends upon the Vivian Knights and envelops them. As the zombies approach and make contact with the light, they begin to vanish, unable to withstand its divine power. Meanwhile, Rommel advances toward the Death Knight, his sword infused with immense power. As Rommel's subordinate throws a bottle of holy water at the Death Knight, the distraction allows Rommel to close in. He swiftly rushes forward and slices the Death Knight in half. With the Death Knight defeated, the zombies and skeletons begin to tremble and falter. Seizing the moment, Rommel orders his knights to charge at full speed, capitalizing on the enemy's disarray. From a distance, Eren observes that they have successfully stopped all the undead from entering the elf village. With the immediate threat addressed, he turns to Canis and asks what their next step should be. Canis explains that the Death Knight was merely a field commander, and that they must eliminate the necromancer or demon controlling the undead. He notes that if it is a demon, Cecilia should be able to detect it. Eren turns to Cecilia, confirming her understanding. Cecilia responds that she has already located the source and indicates the direction they need to go. Eren notices dark energy emanating from the top of a distant hill, in the direction Cecilia indicated. Meanwhile, atop the hill, a flustered demon curses angrily about the destruction of her Death Knight, lamenting the difficulty of creating such a powerful puppet and expressing frustration at having to lead the army herself. As she begins casting a spell to reanimate the fallen, chanting, "Those who have fallen to the underworld, those who follow the will of death, follow my will once more," she is suddenly struck on the head and collapses. Dazed, the demon grabs her head and stands up, only to find a sword pointed at her neck, her surprise evident. Eren aggressively threatens her by pointing his sword and shouting about her interference with his future citizens. Reacting swiftly, she jumps back, prepares a spell, and marks Eren. In response, Eren skillfully uses his sword to cut through her spell, surprising her. Before she can counter, Eren stabs her, causing her to bleed. With her life at risk, Eren demands she choose between death or becoming his servant before her mana is depleted. The demon Eleanor realizes her mana is rapidly depleting and recognizes that Eren's power is extraordinary. When Eren doesn't get a response from her, He assumes she prefers death. Eleanor then asks for his name, and upon learning it's Aaron, she introduces herself as Succubus Eleanor. She agrees to become his subordinate. As she pledges her allegiance, a magic circle begins to glow on Aaron's sword. Meanwhile, the elves, seeing the undead retreat, start celebrating their victory over them. Canis searches for the elf chief, wondering about his absence. Just then, Aaron arrives with a woman on his horse and praises everyone for their efforts. Canis bows and inquires about the demon. Aaron responds that he couldn't kill her as she escaped, but reassures that she won't return soon. Cecilia, noticing the woman, questions her identity. Aaron explains that she was a hostage of the demon, and Cecilia, sensing a strong evil aura from her, suggests that they need to cleanse her. Aaron intervenes as Cecilia insists on cleansing Eleanor. Cecilia questions his reasoning, but Aaron requests that she hold off and promises to explain later. Earlier, after Eleanor became Aaron's subordinate, he instructed her to bring the undead back instead of destroying them. Eleanor was puzzled by this command, but Aaron clarified that he intended to use the undead as resources. Now, Aaron explains this plan to Cecilia, who accepts and understands his decision. Aaron thanks Cecilia and informs her that he has other matters to attend to. At this moment, the elf chief approaches Aaron to express gratitude, acknowledging that they would have been defeated without his help. Aaron responds that he was merely fulfilling the contract. The elf chief insists that he will also honor the contract, affirming that the elves do not lie. Aaron presents the contract and implies that it should be straightforward for the elves to become his subjects. The elves are stunned upon seeing the contract. At this moment, Keisha apologizes to the chief, explaining that the situation left her no choice but to comply with Aaron. Aaron then asks the chief if they are trying to break the contract. After a moment's consideration, the chief kneels before Aaron and agrees to serve him, asking how he should be addressed. Aaron responds that he prefers to be called my lord by all his subjects. Aaron integrates the 1,500 elves, who have lost half their population in the undead invasion, into the city of Brahn. The elf chief observes the empty village and is surprised. Aaron explains that the town is called Aten, a place for adventurers that often lacks labor, and mentions that the elves will need to find their own food supplies. The elf chief expresses concern, noting that they have only brought a few days' worth of provisions. Aaron offers the elf chief two options, a good deal and a bad deal. The chief chooses to hear the good deal first. Aaron proposes to provide a month's worth of food for 1,000 elves. The chief thanks him, but notes that this would leave 500 elves without food. Aaron clarifies that he will also cover the remaining 500 elves' food, but the bad deal requires selecting 500 elves capable of fighting and sending them to Brahn Castle within a week. Confused by Aaron's offer, the elf chief is taken aback. Aaron suggests that both deals are advantageous. Meanwhile, at the imperial capital Javan, Emperor Zerone is engaged in a game with the continent champion. The champion admits defeat and acknowledges that no one on the continent of Karen can surpass the emperor in skill. Emperor Zerone tells the continent champion that, as the champion, he would have ended the game quickly if he had fully committed. An old man then enters, informing Zerone that it's time for his afternoon duties as the vassals are waiting. Zerone expresses a desire to spend the rest of the day with his friend if there are no pressing matters. The old man replies that Count Grey and Count Ormond have requested notaries for the Territorial War. Emperor Zerone, upon learning that the notary document concerns a territorial war with his nephew, Duke Aaron, decides to postpone the game with the continent champion. He leaves the room, thinking to himself about Aaron's apparent recklessness. In the meeting room, Zerone addresses the issue, mentioning that news of the Battle of Brahn in the north is already circulating widely within the Empire. He seeks opinions on whether he should approve the territorial war with Aaron. Duke Gran, aligned with the Emperor, observes Zerone's thoughts and comments with a smile. He supports Duke Aaron's right to assert his claim on the gold mine, arguing that the war should be approved. Duke Rainan, from the neutral faction, warns that the war is unfavorable for Eren, suggesting that if he loses, the Brand territory will be lost as well. In response, Duke Gran questions why there would be an issue with powerful figures waging war according to imperial law and challenges Rainan's opposition to the war, implying that it conflicts with imperial regulations. Duke Rainan acknowledges Duke Gran's point but reflects on his promise to protect the late Emperor's children. Emperor Zerone agrees with Rainan's concerns but concludes that they do not outweigh the need to uphold imperial law. He approves the Territorial War and instructs for the official documents to be issued. Later, in the game room, someone knocks on the door, and Emperor Zerone invites him in. Duke Gran enters and responds to Emperor Zerone's summons. Zerone, intrigued, questions Gran about his apparent ability to read his thoughts during the discussion on the Brand Territorial War. He expresses surprise that Gran, a relatively recent addition to the Emperor faction, seemed to understand his innermost thoughts. Gran acknowledges this, and Zerone conveys his pleasure, stating that having a powerful ally like Gran with aligned intentions is beneficial for ruling the empire. Duke Gran modestly attributes his insights to understanding that Zerone would make a law-compliant decision. Zerone then asks Gran for his prediction on the Territorial War's outcome, wondering if the Count Union will win as expected. Gran interrupts, confidently asserting that the Union will indeed win, citing the significant numerical advantage 1000 versus 2000 as a decisive factor in Duke Eren's anticipated loss. Emperor Zerone expresses his unease about Eren's decision to engage in a seemingly unwinnable territorial war. Duke Gran, responding, mentions that one of his vassals owes a debt to Count Grey and suggests using this opportunity to repay the Count with 30 mercenaries. Gran assures Zerone that this action will be entirely legitimate and free from royal involvement. Zerone, impressed by Gran's insight, acknowledges that mages would indeed be a significant asset and laughs, internally agreeing that they will be more than sufficient. This marks the conclusion of the first part of this manhwa, so remember to like and subscribe to the channel for future update. Leave comments to share your experience. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.